today we're going to be talking about Iceland and specifically our adventure retreat. So I'm Ashley, I'm the founder of Traverse Journeys, and we have with us Allison. Allison, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks so much, Ashley. I'm Allison, and I am a psychotherapist in private practice. I'm also a somatic experiencing practitioner and a clinical adventure therapist. So my day job is doing therapy and also love adventure. I'm a big backpacker, love hiking, skiing, love just being outdoors, and find so much joy in being in nature and travel.
Awesome, thank you. So as we get going, let me just tell you a little bit about Traverse Journeys. So our tagline is People, Planet, Purpose. So all of our trips are really infused with like people to people experiences, human oriented, getting to know local communities, supporting local communities. We really care about the environment, whether we're talking about reducing plastic waste or reducing food waste in our foods, and when we're out hiking, following like no trace, for example, and doing a lot of different projects that support like environmental conservation. And purpose, I mean, travel, we believe, is really meaningful and transformative. And so, there's purpose for yourself as a traveler, as well for the local communities that you visit. We partner with a nonprofit in each of our different locations. We really support a lot of like women's initiatives and community cooperatives, local accommodations. So really emphasize travel with meaning. So today we're talking about Iceland. So just to give you a little overview, so we'll do a little like Iceland culture and society. We'll talk about adventure retreats and what they are and the why, what adventure therapy really means when we're talking about it. We'll give you an overview of our route and like our itinerary and what makes it unique. And then we'll talk about some tips, clothing, money, travel tips, and we'll have time for some questions. And then we have a little discount for you. So, welcome to Iceland. I'm going to give you a short overview. When we do a follow-up email, I have like a longer YouTube, like we have it on YouTube recording from a previous Iceland session with our Icelandic guide who has much more knowledge than I do. But just to give you a little bit kind of an idea of the population, it's a quite small country, 365,000. It's considered part of the Nordics in the North Atlantic. The landscape is incredible. You have volcanoes, you have lava fields, glaciers, mountains. It's a temperate climate. Warmth is brought by the Gulf Stream. It received independence in 1918. It was part of other Scandinavian kingdoms. It was first settled around 874 AD. One of the things that I really find interesting about Iceland is like it doesn't have like other European countries like all these castles and ruins in the same way, because it has a very different history as far as like settlement goes. And then language-wise, they speak Icelandic. So that's my very short overview to Iceland as a country. But I wanted to shift a little bit to an adventure retreat. This is our group from this spring on our Iceland adventure. And, when we talk about it, we're talking about like immersion in nature, challenging like the body and soul, shifting perspective. Travel can really do that. Outdoors can really do that. Talking about in this context, like connecting with other conscious females, building resiliency, talking about like for life, whether it's personal, professional, a combo, up leveling, healing, transformation. So these are kind of the themes that we're talking about on a retreat like this. And just to kind of give you some feedback from past clients on this. So Anne, who was with us this year, she said, my favorite activity was the walk to the river where most of the group soaked. My second favorite activity was the Highland excursions with the 4x4s. Stunning scenery too. But I loved everything I saw. Iceland is beautiful. We had an amazing group of women. We laughed, we had fun, we told jokes, we sang in the van to Thelma's playlist. That's our guide. Thinking about it still puts a smile on my face. And then Carmen, this is what she said. I felt safe, understood, and heard every time I shared my unique points of view. In addition to the workshops that were offered, the synergy being co-created on a daily basis with other retreat participants is something that needs to be highlighted as a powerful tool for healing. And then Carmen also said, after going through a rough patch and feeling completely invisible, I decided to go on one of Kim's retreats. Kim was the leader for this year's Iceland retreat. I not only came back feeling re-energized and positive for my outcomes, but I made friendships that I will treasure for a lifetime. The immersive experience of retreat was very helpful because almost immediately I caught myself applying the skills being discussed. So when we're talking about like what is the experience of the retreat, that is exactly what we're talking about since this is our group from this spring. So just kind of a little idea of what to expect. I'm going to pass it over to Allison to talk about like again, what is adventure therapy, what to expect on a day to day. So Allison, I'll let you go.
Thanks, Ashley. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so adventure therapy is, in a way, exactly what it sounds like. It's using adventure experiences to engage ourselves. So it's cognitive, it's emotional, it's behavioral. So it's an approach that allows for a really holistic view of ourselves and how we show up in the world. We know that when we're exposed to these kind of moderate challenges, such as those that you're going to learn more about from Ashley today, that we can process the experiences in a way that leads to a deeper understanding of ourselves. And often it leads to profound change. So as part of this experiential learning, we'll use our emotions, we'll use our body sensations, and those will be, I'll call them conscious clues, to be curious and explore ourselves and how we show up. And so we'll really pay attention to metaphors that are provided by Iceland's natural landscape, and we can apply those to our own lives. In terms of what to expect, really, it says 1 to 2 hours there, and that's, there definitely will be some set aside retreat time. That'll be for really deeper integration and processing, but also we'll really weave the therapeutic focus throughout the days, throughout the activities. So what that means is that we'll go into each of the activities, or most of them anyway, with intentionality. We'll focus on process. We'll focus on the connection with one another. We'll focus on using all of our senses to engage. And really the experiences themselves will be the central change agent. And as I think it was Carmen said in one of the reviews, really relationships can buffer stress. And so we'll also pay close attention to forming, maintaining a really safe and supportive container for the group and for each person in it. Communication and belonging are really core tenets of adventure therapy. Others are safety, trust, freedom, and also challenge by choice. And so what that means is in all the activities, you'd be encouraged but not forced to participate. It's always your choice whether and also how much you engage. And we really always take a trauma-informed and social justice-informed lens. And so, as I said, when not out adventuring, we'd use that scheduled retreat time for more processing. That can involve mindful and somatic practices. It can involve journaling and self-reflection. It can involve group discussion and lots of other things, and lots of flexibility based on the group and what the group is needing. And so while this adventure retreat is designed as it's a retreat, it's, challenge, encourage personal growth. Also, enjoyment is a focus of adventure therapy. So really the rest, rejuvenation, laughter, connection to yourself and also to others, it's all part of the adventure. And then finally, although the retreat will be therapeutic, it's not therapy. It's not, you won't be overwhelmed by a week of, being with a therapist. I won't have a therapeutic relationship with participants, and so you won't need to think of me that way. I'm more like a guide on your journey of self-discovery. So someone walking beside you as you get to know yourself more fully. In terms of preparation, I think that anytime you take on something like this, it could help to start a routine of physical activity in advance. Of course, with the doctor's support if you're new to it or restarting physical activity, but it's not required. This trip is really for all fitness levels. And all that's really required is for you to bring an open mind to the process, be ready to lean into the experience. Think about your why. Why are you signing up for the adventure, for this retreat, and bring that curiosity as you look at what do you want to leave behind? How do you want to optimize your future self? And then I'm sure that Ashley will talk more about this, but my take on why we chose Iceland, it's it's the beautiful landscape has such a variety of natural wonders. And so there's really a ton of opportunity for exploring, if we use the metaphor of the landscape of our own lives, that can really be felt on a deep level. And so, just as an example, I know that, we'll see glaciers on this adventure trip. And did you know that glaciers move, grow, shed layers, push other land masses? And so thinking about it from a, metaphorical lens, how can we apply that as a metaphor for our own lives? Though that's just kind of a little taste of, the type of things we'll be thinking about and talking about in our kind of retreat focus and yeah. So I don't know, Ashley, if there's anything that you want to add to that, or if did I cover everything?
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. And I think another thing to say about like choosing Iceland, Iceland's weather is very unpredictable. And so life is unpredictable. So it's a really great reflection because we might have our plans, for a particular hike or a particular outdoor activity, and like the weather may not be super cooperative. And that's like such a great learning platform. I love, Allison, what you said about like choosing the challenge, because this is really definitely the type of retreat or type of trip where you are choosing to be challenged, because like we're out in nature and it's not something that we can control. What we can control is how we respond to that, how we work on ourselves. So it's a really great destination for that. So with that said, just want to take you on a little overview of what our trip will look like. So I again, since I'm not our Icelandic guide, I'm not great at pronouncing Icelandic sites. They're very difficult. But our guide Thelma is amazing. She will be the one on the retreat itself to like help you learn some Icelandic and pronouncing everything. But this is a little overview of where we're going to be visiting. So like South Key, there are a lot of key sites in the South Coast area, like waterfalls, a number of glaciers, a number of national parks. So of course we begin in Reykjavik. It's a great city. It's a small city, but it's like one that's super fun to walk around. It's got some like colorful streets, the beautiful harbor. We've got some tips. There's enough time in the itinerary to have a little bit to explore by yourself, and you can always add extra days if you wanted to explore it a little more. Although I will say probably a day or two in Reykjavik is like enough. Some people might want more, but it's really getting out of the city. So in the South Coast, there are a lot of waterfalls, very beautiful. And this is where the fun, like Allison said, like kind of the hikes to the waterfalls we do pretty all levels. You do need to have good enough gear, some good hiking shoes, and definitely rain coverage. There are also some really beautiful black beaches. And one of the hikes that we do is through a gorge. These are just some of the fun pictures from one of our trips, prepared to get a little wet, but it's worth it. Super beautiful. And then another of the big sites that we go see are the glaciers. And it's a really, really incredible thing to see in person, because like even in the pictures, like the size, you can't even really grasp until you're there. So we do a big glacier hike. We see the lagoon, super beautiful to see. And Allison, I'm sure you'll have many, many metaphors to work with with the glaciers. And then the other region that we go to is called the Golden Circle. So it's known for all the many waterfalls. One of the things I love about Iceland is they all have like their lore, and Thelma, our guide, I'm sure will tell you all about them, like fairies hiding in the rocks, that kind of thing. There's of course a lot of thermal activity in Iceland. So there are different opportunities for hot pools. We go to a spot called the Secret Lagoon. It's also cool because it's very cultural. The thing is, on our trips, and a lot of trips, different ones have different styles, but we also love to get to know like the culture. And in Iceland, like soaking in the hot pools is a big part of the culture. People will just go with a family and go for a soak. It's something that they might do every week. We visit a really incredible tomato farm. It's a really interesting story about how Iceland is able to provide pretty much all of its own tomatoes through these greenhouse like growing spots. And it is probably one of the most delicious meals you'll have on the trip. You'll have a lot of good food, but this is a really good one. And then geysers, again, back to that activity in Iceland. There's so many unique natural elements in Iceland. So you'll get to see some geysers. That was on one of those first photos. And then one of the cool things that we do on this itinerary is go to the Westman Islands. It's still a warm volcano, last eruption in 1973. Puffin season is in the spring. It's kind of, I think, toward the end, but there's still a chance of puffins, so it could happen when you're visiting there. And then the Sneffels Peninsula. Very volcanic landscape. It's funny when you go, some people actually, there's spots that almost look like you're like in Ireland. It's kind of surprising. It's cool to see the different types of landscapes and like the black sand beaches. You can really see the impact from the volcanoes. You know, again, something I mentioned earlier that's kind of striking is like, unlike kind of continental Europe, where you have these medieval towns with walls and castles and stuff like that, like Iceland is a very remote, aside from Reykjavik, like you see in like in this picture, like a little, you know, farmhouse, or there might be like a very small town. There's not a ton of big towns. So it's really cool to be driving along and seeing like a remote, maybe old church or old, you know, building of some kind. Some of the other highlights, of course, there's the famous Blue Lagoons, and we do a little grand finale there. There are other hot pools that you'll be experiencing. We do some visit to a dairy farm, you get to try Icelandic skyr, which is like a very high protein yogurt. And then see how rye bread is made underground. They use like thermal geyser heat, which is a really cool thing. And then this is an optional add-on, but there's a chance to go horseback riding, like real Icelandic horse. So if that's something that you're interested in, that's in the optional add-ons. So kind of other experiences, like we've kind of emphasized, like real immersion into the outdoor landscape. You're going to see quite a lot of different landscapes and really get like the full experience. You'll get wet, you'll get dirty, you'll get cold, you'll get warm, all the things. This is kind of what makes it really fun. We have a great guide. Her name's Thalma. She's fantastic. She has her own like yoga background, so she's a really great complement to this retreat. We stay at some really cute boutique B&Bs, guest houses, like all locally owned. We have our own private van for it. All the cuisine is like seasonal, fresh, and then of course the grand finale at the Blue Lagoon. These are kind of some ideas of like the accommodations, like really remote, really pretty vistas. The sunset was from 2021, or sunrise, I mean, was from 2021. Just like so pretty being out in the country and in nature. At some of the accommodations, it's like two twins in a room, or you can select my own room. We have one stay where we stay at like a cottage where like two people per room and then a shared bathroom in each cottage. So there's a couple different like rooming situations that are possible. Just some kind of examples of food. So you can see the tomato farm in this one picture, the rye bread being made underground, as you can see here. And yes, puffins come for coffee as well. Here's some more little tidbits, you know, something that's kind of cool. So this middle section, so there's traditional Icelandic food, which of course has a lot of seafood influence, you know, a lot of kind of like potatoes and like kind of cold weather food. But one thing that I like to highlight is also like how immigration impacts food in a place. And you'll find in Reykjavik that there's actually quite a bit of like Vietnamese influence. And I think that that's really fascinating and really cool to experience, because it goes back to the fishing industry. And when there was like an influx of immigration from Vietnam, it was a really good fit. And so, you know, for people coming from like a fishing culture. So there's actually some fantastic like Vietnamese, Asian influenced food in Reykjavik mostly, but you know, makes a lot of sense with the seafood. And it's really great to, you know, support other communities that live in Iceland that you wouldn't really like necessarily assume or connect. And then and on the subject of food, I don't have it on here, but we get a lot of questions about, you know, dietary restrictions and like dairy free, gluten free, vegan, vegetarian. All of the above are doable. You know, some destinations are a little easier or harder than others. I'd say Iceland is in the middle, because like sometimes when you're out in the countryside, like some of the options, if you're vegan, for example, might not be like the most exciting, but it's still doable. I always encourage, especially on an adventure type retreat like this, to, if you do have dietary restrictions, such as like celiac, for example, like pack snacks that you know that it will work for you, because we will be in remote places. That said, we'll definitely have the option like to stop at like a grocery store en route, that kind of thing, stock up on snacks. So our retreat is scheduled for the spring, but we always get the question of when to travel in Iceland. So I thought I'd just let you guys know kind of the highlights. So the spring is known for what we call the midnight sun. It's light really late, it's light really early. It's puffin season, it's lambing season, so you might see some lambs. On the opposite side, the winters are mostly dark. That's when you would see like the northern lights. Maybe a little more intrepid travelers because you've got snow and ice and even more elements. The fall, you can also typically see the northern lights a little later in the fall. It's slightly cooler. It's a great time for horseback riding, as is the spring. And then summer, of course, is like really long days. We do a self-drive option on our normal Iceland itinerary. It's a good time for that too. Of course, the prices are a lot higher in the summer. So that's always something to know. So in terms of like what you would want to wear, even like year round, you want to have layers. They have a saying in a lot of places, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing. So Iceland is a place to prepare for. Definitely want good rain gear. Like make sure you have a good rain jacket. That's an important one. Waterproof pants. There are a couple of options if you needed some of these things that we could get you a rental in Iceland if that was helpful. Boots, waterproof boots, hats and gloves. We have a full packing list that has suggestions because you might want, like, for example, with hats and gloves, two different kinds. You might want like a cap if it's raining or like a beanie if it's cold. Same with gloves, something that's a little more water resistant versus like warm and fuzzy, depending on what the weather's like. Along the way, there were not really a lot of laundry options. So something to stock up on in your travel gear is like a biodegradable laundry soap. Like there are good options at like REI or Patagonia. Something like that is a really handy travel accessory to have. Money in Iceland. So we have a blog. Why is Iceland so expensive? Because it is a very expensive spot. So it kind of covers a lot of the reasons. But they use the Icelandic kroner. You can go to XE for rates. It's definitely a currency that goes up and down quite a bit, like lately especially. So, you know, we have a set price, but sometimes like with these price fluctuations, it's something to just be aware of. Like if you're looking at the price now, but like in April, you know, it might change a little bit if you're kind of thinking about like, okay, what am I going to pay for extras, dinners that aren't included, that kind of thing. So just something to note to kind of keep track. Actually, it has an app. It's a really good one. You really don't need cash in Iceland. Like credit card is taken everywhere. You do have to kind of be a little, you know, prepared for sticker shock. I suppose it also depends on where you're coming from. Like if you're comparing it to New York, it's probably not so bad. But like other places, it might be a little more of a sticker shock. But like the reasons explained in the blog, you know, they have really high standards for fair wages and employment law. Like for example, with our guide, she has to have a certain amount of time off from like evening to morning. She can't work during that time. She can only drive so many hours in a day. They also have VAT, value added tax. So that's a piece of it. And of course, it is an island after all. So tipping is generally not super expected in Iceland. So it's that's you know, that piece of it you can not have to stress about too much. You know, if you really loved your guide or your retreat leader and you wanted to give them the tip, by all means, you can. We do have some great savings tips. So of course, traveling with a group helps. You know, as far as like snacks and stuff, like stocking up at the store, eating like a local, you know, if you're on your own for a couple of days, for example, in Reykjavik, if you're sharing, you know, transit or walking, they actually have a great bus system there too. So just some questions we get about money. So kind of gone through it pretty quickly, but we are going in May next year for our adventure retreat. We've got a nice big discount for you if you book by the 20th. Here's a code that you can use. And I'd love to open it up for questions. You can feel free and type it into the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and ask some questions.
What was that code again? I missed it.
Oh, yeah, it is. Let me go back. Iceland Retreat Live. And is it Kara?
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Kara. Are there any other questions that we can help with?
I don't have any at this point. I mean, really, I just kind of wanted to get an overview of what to expect, and you guys did a good job on that.
Great. Allison, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, I think I said what I wanted to say, just to reiterate that You know, I think each trip is slightly different in that we go to the same places, but the feel of the group really determines a lot of you know what happens. And so I'm a really flexible retreat leader, and yeah, I think I said this, but just getting a feel for the group and what the group is needing, I think is a really important part of this. So that's why we didn't give as much info about like what are the specifics of what you'll do in that retreat time, but I think really making sure it meets everybody's needs is my main focus.
Yeah. And like our last retreat, so Kim, the retreat leader in this spring's retreat, you know, one of the things is like with the workshop, like you're gaining like tools, you know, from like a qualified professional who has all of this great toolbox for the how you can use it. And then when you're out, you know, like in your hike and during the day and having conversations, you know, or talking about like issues in your life or some things that you want to change or ways you're growing, that's when you get to use those tools. So that's where it's like really integrative. You know, you have these kind of consolidated times that are like kind of like the workshop piece, but you're really using it throughout the whole trip and then you're taking it home with you. So it's a really great experience in that way. All right. Well, if we don't have any more questions, we can go ahead and wrap it up. So thanks for joining us today. Thanks, Allison. And
Thank you.
we'd love to hear from you. Feel free and reach out with any questions. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye.